Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today I have a very special guest. David Roche is a professional coach and mentor specializing in guiding first-time CEOs through his company Gray Area Coaching. He serves as non-executive chair on the London Book Fair and chair of New Writing North, while also lecturing at NFTS. David's second book, Become a Successful First-Time CEO, became an Amazon #1 bestseller in March of 2024. With a background as CEO of Borders and Books and roles at Waterstones, HMV, and HarperCollins, David has made significant contributions in retail and publishing. He was awarded an honorary fellowship in 2017 for his services to the UK book trade. David, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, and he's got his jumper on for us. Everybody's who's Christmas, everybody who's watching on YouTube.
All
David,
right, I'm going to confess. I basically put the wrong jumper on, and my grandson's asleep in my room, and I can't get to a change.
Well, we like the colors. You almost look like an architect with all that black. Before we get into what you do now, I always have to ask everybody, David, like how did you get here? You're from a family of entrepreneurs. Where does that spirit come from?
Gosh, I don't know. I think, like a lot of people, my career was sort of serendipitous and was all by chance. People tapping you on the shoulder at certain points and saying, "Why don't you give this a go?" Rather than any great plan of wanting to be an astronaut or something. And I sort of fell into retailing. I think at university I read psychology. I probably wanted to go be a copywriter in an advertising agency or something like that. But I ended up falling into retailing and worked in operations, in planning, in project management. And this was with HMV. It was the biggest chain of record stores that was around during the 90s. And in a time where you couldn't fail to make money as everyone's replacing their tapes with CDs and video cassettes with DVDs and so on and so forth, games industry. And I ended up being buying and marketing director at HMV. And really loved that, and then moved from the world of music and film. It was good timing considering that it was about to be destroyed almost to the edge of destruction by digitization, into publishing. Mm-hmm. and started at that point. My first CEO role, I really valued having the power of coaching and having an independent sounding board that was a safe place. And I started thinking about that leadership moment and that particular change when you think it's a small step from being a very senior C-suite member to become a CEO, and how different that is. And it made me think a lot. And I guess it's an issue for the industries you work with, about this specialist versus generalist thing, and moving up the ladder, specialists not being given the support to become a general manager, and general managers being paranoid they don't have the specialist skills and they're jack of all trades, and not understanding that as further up you go, the more being a general manager is a specialist skill. Being a generalist is a specialist skill. So then I was poacher turned gamekeeper, worked for HarperCollins Publishing, and left to set. And then I got meetinged out. It was meetings every day.
Meetinged out. I love. Yeah, this would resonate with my business partner. He gets meetinged out too.
And I wanted to set up on my own, and I set up and initially it was a lot of consulting, and then as that morphed into non-exec director work and chairmanships, I went on a coaching course initially to become a better non-exec. That we have a phrase here: non-exec should be noses in and fingers out. So all those little skills on challenge, support, asking good questions, all those coaching skills are actually brilliant for non-exec and chair roles. So And I've kept those going. But I thought on the side I would find out a bit more because I enjoyed the coaching, and I've sort of unofficially coached and mentored for most of my career. And I was fascinated with the idea of trying to link coaching to mentoring more, so that you could use the 30 years of experience sitting on boards, but also combine that with coaching. And there was one holiday I went on when it really came home to me. I love scuba diving, and I've done it all over the world. But I did a free diving course about 5 years ago. And for free diving, I'm sitting there, and they're trying me out in the pool just before, and they're saying, "All right, hold your breath." And I held my breath for, I don't know, 30 seconds or something. And then they said, "All right, well, you're not going to get down to 20 meters holding your breath for that." And I'm sitting there going, I want someone who knows what they're doing, because it's dangerous, and I don't want to make a mistake of doing this. But I really need someone to break down the limiting belief that says I can't hold my breath for 3 minutes or something. It's just ridiculous. And then within 2 hours, I was holding my breath for 3.5 minutes, and next day morning, I was diving down to 25 meters. And you're sitting there going, it's a miracle, the power of this thing. But and they said, well, everyone does that. It's quite normal. And that really came home to me, and I carry that on into my coaching and mentoring now. And like the book, the way the book was constructed, for me it's the power of storytelling, and it's what it makes people feel, as opposed to the data and bullet points that they remember.
Yeah. We talk a lot about on this show and other similar shows, and people, when I interview people such yourself, about this 7-year moment in startups.
Yeah.
And most people, you got to get to the 7-year. You get to 8, then your chances of failing are dramatically less. CEOs fail a lot. Is there any? Why do you think what is the main reasons why they're failing?
The numbers are very scary, and the impact on organizations as well as the people within them is enormous. There was an article, I think most people quote 2 out of 5 new CEOs fail within the first 18 months. And I think it's a couple of reasons, but mainly about the transition. People aren't set up to understand the difference. And for me, that transition is poor, because it's about not building the necessary relationships at all levels, whether that's internal with your senior leadership team, upwards to the board and chair, across the organization, and then within the industry and the media outside the organization. And I think McKinsey quoted that they reckon of Standard & Poor's top 1,500 companies, $1 trillion is lost in value every year on the basis of poor transitioning planning for C-suite and CEO. So it's a commonplace problem, but it doesn't seem to be taken seriously enough. And I think that, personally, I think a coach and coach mentor should be compulsory for a brand new CEO, because why wouldn't you set them up to have as much chance to succeed as possible, and being able to offload and learn from someone independent, where they can really say what they mean and what they're really thinking. It seems crazy, because otherwise it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everyone has a level of imposter syndrome. Well, 8 out of 10 have a level of imposter syndrome. I'm rather more worried about the ones who have no doubt about their own abilities or experience. They're the ones to watch. You come through, and you've got an armor that you wear that says, "Look at me, I'm so confident, I know everything." And actually, that armor means that everyone backs off as well and goes, "That person doesn't want any help, doesn't look like they need any help." So you don't build it. So it makes the relationship building even worse. So having that independent person to go, "Oh, my boss and I just can't talk," or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I've heard this. This phrase suddenly is not now in my life. Imposter syndrome. In the past 6 months, I swear, it just keeps popping up, and it hasn't popped up before. But a big part of it is my girlfriend talks about it a lot. She's an architect too, and she claims she has had imposter syndrome quite a bit. And I know maybe I'm one of those guys to watch out for because I haven't. I just didn't know the phrase, and I'm very confident and stuff. I definitely had it in hindsight. But I think there's a myth out there that maybe men don't get it.
That's a total myth.
Yeah, I would love to break that down.
Yeah, I think that was certainly the sort of folklore around imposter syndrome for many decades, because men were never going to admit that they had it, apart from this, because they thought that it's a weakness. You're not allowed to show one of those. And women, quite rightly, have had more an excuse for it, because the glass ceiling and all the way men often take credit for things that women do. And I mean, I've worked in. I mean, the music industry was a shocking example back in the 90s. I mean, it's an absolute classic. So I've seen it. I've seen how it affects promotions to well-being, to everything. But men absolutely suffer from it too. And it doesn't mean that you have it all the time necessarily, but it comes in waves, and it's certain people, with certain individuals, it can really. I've seen it to the point where someone who's incredibly good at debating and managing people, explaining what the situation are, persuasive, that put them inside one person, their bête noire, and they just clam up, can't say it. And anyone else, they're fine. And I've certainly experienced that in one case, early on in my career, and so it's certainly not true that men don't suffer from imposter syndrome. They absolutely do, and in some ways more so, because they're bottling it up and not allowed to confer.
Yeah, right. We can't. I mean, as soon as you show weakness.
But my most extraordinary example with a woman who extremely bright, talented lady that I coached as a CEO, a first-time CEO, and she would say to me in 1 minute, I'd ask her about imposter. She said, "There's not a day goes past by when I don't crippled with fear in the office." And you go, "My word!" And then within 20 minutes later, I'm talking about, tell me an example of someone who you work for, who you admire, and she went, "There's not one person I've worked for in my entire career that I haven't surpassed within X months," or whatever. And you go, "Wow!" So the fear of being not good enough, and then this, I know I'm better than everyone else, living in the same body, pretty much coexisting at the same time, is really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating for sure. I'm also fascinated by luck. It's a word people often try to describe, because they're like, does it just happen, or is there reasons around it? Is there ways you can set yourself up for it? How do you make your own luck?
Yeah, I think ways you can set yourself up. I think you make your own luck, and sure, there's elements that are like, oh, well, it's lucky that person left at that time and that was a vacancy. It was lucky that came along, or whatever it might be. There might be some luck along the way in terms of your the affordability for you to get an education or whatever as you're growing up. But actually, I'm a firm believer you make your own luck, and part of that is being able to see an opportunity when it comes along. But the key is having done all the preparatory work over months and years beforehand to be able to one, identify that opportunity when it comes along. And I spent quite a lot of time talking about this. There's a couple of examples where I believe, if you're if you're an internal candidate and you're in the final interview, you might well for a CEO role, you might well pretty much everyone on that shortlist is able to do the job. They're all experienced. They can do everyone can do it to a certain degree. And the question that the board are really looking for is not, can you do the job? It's, can you be trusted to do the job? And that interview process is pretty fickle, and clearly doesn't have any guarantee of success. So an internal candidate has a real opportunity over years to position themselves in a place of trust to be able to answer that question, and that means as part of your aspirational career handling, you're talking to your boss saying, what are your constantly, what things are worrying you, what concerns you most, how can I get involved, how can I help solve that, and then become the expert at the one thing that your boss is absolutely paranoid about, and volunteer for things that aren't necessarily in your domain, because that means that you're showing that you can cope with change, you can cope with new areas, you've got a brilliant attitude, and you're an all-rounder that will be able to pick up the ball and run with it, wherever you are. So I think that's really important. Plus, also, this whole thing of always hire the best people you possibly can, always surround yourself with talent, hire people who are better than you. As part of your own succession planning, it's really critical. Again, if you're the internal candidate, you're running a really important department, and then the external candidate comes along and it's a bit of a 50-50 choice. If you haven't got your successor lined up, they may be well saying, hang on, if we move this person out of their really important role, that could collapse, and that's really damaging and dangerous risk for the company. Therefore, let's bring in the other person in, that you stay where you are, and everything's rosy. And simply going, hang on, that's not what I want at all. So always look to backfill, which to make your appointment an easy one to make.
Yeah. People sometimes think that coaching is the same as mentoring. There's a clear difference, but I would love for you to talk about what you think the difference is, and then maybe why that combination is so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, coaching and mentoring, pure coaching is really just asking questions. And I mean, there's also all sorts of different models, and I think the most simple would be the GROW model, where it's setting. You talk about the goals. What does the person really want? You talk about the state they're in at the moment. What's restricting them from doing? What barriers are in place? And then what can you do about it? And I think that's the free form element. The goal setting is really important to understand what it's really all about. But the freeform element, what are you going to do? What can you do? And that's the bit, and everyone just goes through the same tram lines, go, well, I tried this and it didn't work. I tried that in the past in a different company, but that worked really well, so I might try that again, blah, blah, blah. And it's trying to see things with a new pair of eyes that is the really important part of it. And what the coach gives with the question is, is there anything else you can do? Is a first question that goes on. What else? Until the point where they've gone through all the standard maneuvers that they handle, and actually have to come up with something radically different. But of course, and then there's some commitment around what you can do. The great thing about that is that the person has come up with the ideas themselves, and therefore will own it. They've not been told what to do, but they've been encouraged to unearth areas that they. So that's great, and I think the pure coach fraternity would say that's why we don't give advice, because it actually sits deeper and longer. My issue, and I certainly experienced this as a CEO with a coach, was that's all very well, but I'm CEOs are busy people, and if you sit there and you've got 10 minutes left and something's really is important, you're going, and the person's going, anything else? No, anything else? And you're going, just help me.
Yeah.
And 60-70% of my coaching sessions with CEOs, you might have a plan over months or years to what you want to do in order to build, but actually the number of times it's, can we just talk about the board meeting next week? My bosses are coming over from the States, and of course you improve things, but there's a specific end in mind. And so to be able to shortcut things is important, and having been there and done it yourself, and I think mentors are very conscious of their own mistakes as much, if not more so, than their successes, because I think if you're good, you dwell on that and you reconsider, well, how could I make that better? So you're used to that sort of post-mortem process. So stopping someone making what could be a catastrophic mistake at an early date is pretty welcome as well. But I don't know. Certainly I found in my coaching and mentoring that the mentoring side is, if someone is stuck and they don't know what to do, rather than it would take half an hour to sit there, I find that if I just say, if I change the framework and say, okay, let me just tell you about something that happened to me that's sort of broadly similar, blah 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 blah, and you don't even get halfway through, it doesn't really matter what it is, and they suddenly go, something you just said triggered my answer, and I'm guessing it's because you're surrounded with the problem because you've been discussing it, but you can see the answer to other people's problems far easier than you see the answers to your own. So you're surrounded with the problems you've been discussing. Suddenly you're talking, you're introduced to someone else's problem. You go into problem solving mode, and that connection sparks off into your own problem solving and onto your own issues. So, and it happens all the time. The first time I thought it was a miracle. You're sitting there going, "What a stroke of luck that was," and it happens so consistently now that to me that's a real bonus of adding mentoring in, because it's a grey area. That's what's a part of the reason I called the company a grey area coaching. There's quite a lot of grey area between coaching and mentoring, and you need to be able to flip backwards and forwards, and different horses for courses for different people and different experience levels and so on and so forth.
Yeah. The gooey gray is where the magic happens, no matter what it is, right? I think with mentoring, sometimes it's just people need a push. They're like standing on the fence and they need a push. So, we could relate that, I think, to like succession planning. A lot of folks in that certainly in the first couple years of their business that they start, it's just your fight or flight survival mode. You got to crush it. A lot of folks, not everybody. Some people just knock it out of the park from the beginning.
Yeah.
I know for us, it was that very much fight or flight. We were pushing up a boulder mountain every day, metaphorically. And we were not thinking about succession planning at that point. But what would you say to people that maybe are listening to this and they're in that first year and it's like, now is actually the time when you should start planning this early?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a difference quite a big difference between startups and sort of established corporates of a different size, and so there's not sort of one magic answer, but I don't know, great people are the key to absolutely everything, and the number of companies I've worked in, and I'm thinking of one in particular that I've been involved in for a number of years that I've recently left, and because I've done my time, and with an absolutely outstanding individual, and that sort of key person risk. You might have someone coming in, they're brand new. If they're that good, then if they get hit by a bus, or if they're that good that someone's going to come in and give them an offer they can't refuse, then to have everything dependent on them, you can try and change the processes, and you can have it on your risk register and say, right, I'm going to build up the team around them and so on and so forth. But those things take time, and you can't do that overnight. So succession planning, one, it's critical for backfilling. Two, tomorrow's leaders, the whole coaching mentoring thing is really about making tomorrow's leaders better than today's, and always try and be a better leader than the ones you've reported to, and that investment is so important, that succession planning is not only critical for the company, for everything, it's also critical for the individuals who are behind. If you're selected out of the group as saying, I see you as tomorrow's leader, we're going to invest in you, boy, you can move mountains when you're given a bit of confidence and a bit of latitude. And then it's whether you've got the management styles of real empowerment that says has a culture, we agree goals, but how you deal with them, you've got budgets and you've got resource limitations or whatever, but how you get there, I'm less fussed about as a leader. I'm not a micromanager. You put your own imprint on it, and you find a way. That's great. I used to have problems working with a company who I was quite a stickler for reports, at board meetings, updates, and I was probably the old project manager in me, and these people go, but you're incredibly relaxed about giving us license to do things our way and everything. And I said, well, why? But you're a pain in the butt for making us write a report on a monthly basis. And I'm going, why do you think you got the freedom? It's purely because I understand exactly what needs to happen at certain periods of time, how you get there, and if you're on track, you can have all the latitude that you want. If you're not on track, then we start drawing the rope in a little bit more, and everyone has different lengths of rope. But it can be a highly motivational thing as well.
Yeah, it can be a high level. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can start to see maybe it's interesting. It's like I just opened this door, and then if I'm in the startup, and then I'm like, oh, and then I'm already looking at the exit. Kind of. I mean, kind of like maybe at least have just an idea that there's a glowing exit light there. Your second book is bestseller as of March 2024. It's called Become a Successful First-Time CEO. What's in the book? Why should people pick it up?
Because I'm not if you're a real business book freak that devours a business book every day, it's possibly not the one for you. I read novels. I think novels. I enjoy novels. It gets me out of work. And actually, if you read great writing, is about life and about people and about relationships in a way that. And that whole thing earlier about emotions versus bullet points. I'm definitely the former. So I approached this book to write it about relationships, the relationships you need to build as a CEO. There's no right or wrong answer in relationships, because if I'm asking you how you feel about something today, you and then I ask you in a week's time, you may feel completely differently. So there probably are wrong things that we could all name that you shouldn't do. But if I'm talking, you see it the whole time with people who wield the baton and use the whip rather than the incentives to get people going. Say your sales are down, off you go. If I whip harder, then that'll get a great result. And I work for bosses whose tool was fear of the sack. That they would say it themselves. It's fear of the sack. And you just. What if the person turns around, after they've collapsed and gone into a thing, saying, well, I couldn't talk to you, but actually at that time, my father you discovered my father had Parkinson's disease, and I became his primary carer, and blah 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 blah. And no one ever, the bad boss never gets to those reasons why. They just crack the whip harder. So anyway, so all these relationships are important. There's no right or wrong answers. My editors described it as more of a why-to book than a how-to book. So it's a little bit more unusual for business books. And it's cram-packed full of stories. Having worked in publishing for 20 years, I'm a firm believer in that. Stories and anecdotes, often on how not to do it, but that appear to resonate with people. And my favorite one was one CEO said, not many business books can pull off being a genuine page turner, which I thought was a great thing. So it's for people who are first-time CEOs and those aspiring to be first-time CEOs. And again, what I really like is when you get a gnarled old CEO who you think knows it all, and they say, "I really loved your book. I wish it had been around when I was that age." But the great leaders realize that they need coaches as much as the first-time ones. And I think there's a real thing that if I get a coach and a mentor, then it's an admission that I don't have all the answers, and you're not expected to have all the answers. It's not really what they're there for. So yeah. Anyway, it's a read, which is
it sounds fascinating.
Entertaining.
Yeah, is it on Audible?
Yeah, it is now.
Fantastic. I will pick it up.
It wasn't. I did it about 3 months ago. Yes, it's up by now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm picking it up because I love this idea that it's stories. I really appreciate that too. The best business books that I've read are those kind of story books. And so I'm a business book junkie, but not I don't think it applies to me in the sense I'm going to be bored. It'll still be much different because your stories have to be different. We're running up on the half hour here, David. I got two questions I ask every guest at the end.
Sure.
First one is, knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time to when you first started your coaching business, what is one piece of advice you'd give your former self?
Cool. I think I would have done a formal sort of coaching qualification a lot earlier. You know, I did it as an afterthought. I have a little coaching business on the side of my full-time work. I only can take 2 or 3 clients. I really love those sessions. I love those relationships, and I think I would have been a better boss as a CEO if I knew how to coach at that time.
I love that, David. If people want to pick up the book, follow you, get in touch with you about your services, where can they go?
Okay, so the book, book's available in good bookshops. Amazon on both sides of the Atlantic, and Canada have got it, and I say Audible have got the audio book version. My website is www.grayareacoaching.co.uk, and I have to say, for you folks, GREY, not GRAY, as coaching.co.uk, and that website has got more information about the book. It's got stuff about how I coach and a lot about my background, and there's a link to all the podcasts and interviews and articles that I write are all in there under a media news tab. So there's a lot of information there for anyone who wants to dig deeper.
We'll check it out, David. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure speaking to you, buddy.
Thank you, Lance. Enjoyed it.